Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Stronghold Floors podcast. Today, we are going to be talking about 5 disastrous solutions for your garage floor that just don't hold up. This is based off of 2 blogs that are on our site currently, and we wanted to revisit these 5 just terrible solutions. And Mike, I want to start off by asking, how many of these 5 solutions are you typically seeing in our service areas?
Well, really the big one is the floor covering, Sam. That's the problem that we see the most often because that covers your mats, your tiles, and even carpet. We've even seen 1 or 2 people put true tile like you'd put in your house out on the garages, on the garage floor, and that doesn't end well. We've seen a couple instances of the acid stains and the dyes. And then polished concrete, that's something we just started seeing a little bit now where people got talked into doing it 3-4 years ago, and they're coming to us saying, hey, this isn't working. Please replace it. So to be fair, when I talk about the stamped concrete and the overlays, this is stuff that I personally saw in my travels to Southern California, Arizona, Florida. I've actually went to training in Arizona and Florida. So down there, you don't only get shown it, but you get told the pros and cons of it from their perspective and their weather and their use models, which is a little different than ours, but I can't say it's a good solution anywhere. These are things that I'm not going to recommend you do, period, no matter where you live.
Well, let's get in on the first one here. Just tell us, Mike, when we're talking about stamped concrete, describe for us what we're looking at.
Yes, so stamped concrete, that's where when you're actually putting in and installing the concrete right from the get-go, a lot of times they'll do integral color in the concrete, and then they're texturing it with these mats that they can push down in, and they're going to make it look like stone, or in this case, this is actually kind of a natural stone look to this garage here. And so you don't see it a whole lot in the garages, but you do see it out on driveways and walkways and porches and patios. Even here in our service area in PA, Maryland, Virginia, you occasionally see people that got really excited to do this. They got talked into doing it. The problem is it does look beautiful in the beginning. It really is cool looking, but think about what makes up stamped concrete. It's got deep, deep grooves. It's got integral color. And sometimes the color is also just on the surface, and then it's sealed. And so you start with this, and to be fair, Sam, this is more what you end up with. And these are AI generated. I'm going to be fair about this. This is not a real garage. I just had to create something to show you. This is what's really going to happen. You're going to get wear marks. You're going to get tread marks. You're going to get scratches in it. And you're going to find that all that beautiful texture is just big dirt traps. It's very hard to clean. To be honest, the other problem you really have is your tire wear path. A lot of times you're going to get because it really is textured to look like stone. Those edges of the stone are going to chip, and now you're seeing the underlying concrete, and you're missing the sheen. And once those pieces start chipping off, there's no repairing it.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Stan.
So, one of the things we had talked about was that it tends to, the sealers on these, they don't hold up. And is it because of what you're describing, where it's more susceptible of being to chipping and things like that?
Well, the problem is sealers really aren't the same as coatings. When we put a coating down, and it's, we talk about in this measurement of mils, but think of it like if I say our coating goes out, the clear coating is 10 mils thick, it's like 10 or more layers of dried paint. So it's building thickness. These sealers, for the most part, are just getting sprayed on, and they're topical, but they're mostly soaking into the pores, and there's not much left on top. And so, one, you don't have much of wear thickness, so the tire traffic's going to beat up those sealers very rapidly. But on top of that, these sealers aren't the same way as the industrial coatings. They don't tolerate splash spills of gasoline. They don't hold up well against the road salt and the antifreeze and everything that garage can be subjected to. These sealers can't deal with it very well. These sealers really are good for interior concrete, to be honest. And Our experience with it, with these sealers, is people that have it on their external concrete, they're all the time calling and going, "Can you reseal this?" Well, no, I can't. Because mostly what happens is when you try to rejuvenate it and you put new sealer on top of it, moisture gets trapped in between the layers and it hazes.
Mm.
Or the 2 layers, they don't interlock properly, so then it just flakes back off anyway. So, yeah, just really
So
not designed for vehicular traffic.
and that goes into, maybe the last thing to mention here, and you've sort of touched on it, but like, the keeping your garage clean when you've used one of these solutions, it's not even really possible. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's extremely difficult because if you pressure spray it, you blow the sealer off. And if you don't pressure spray it, think of if you think it's bad to clean your shower grout, this is gonna be worse,
Yeah.
you know? And I don't think anyone wants to go out there with a toothbrush and start going down those lines in between and trying to clean it. So, stamped concrete, no matter where you live, no matter how much you like it, it's the wrong solution for the garage, period. To me, it's one of the biggest disastrous solutions, and it's the one that you can't get rid of because it's your base
Yeah.
floor.
Yeah.
It's not something on top of it. It is the concrete floor.
Yeah. Yeah. So speaking of things that go on top of your garage floor, the next one that we had was overlays. Um, Talk to me about, what are these overlays in terms of, as a garage floor solution, and what's the problem? What makes these so disastrous?
Well, what's interesting about overlays is you're starting off with a normal concrete floor and you're trying to make it look like stamped concrete. You're
Mm.
building up the thickness and giving it the look of stone or brick or tile. So it's cementitious. It's not a coating. It doesn't go out liquid. It's more like the cement paste that makes up your floor to begin with. So it is actually a very strong product that they bond to the floor. They stamp it down with a type of mat, and there's usually integral color or there's color they introduce to it, and then you seal it. And so
Mm.
overlays have a lot of problems. It's tied to the sealers aren't going to hold up well. The texture allows dirt to get trapped in it, and the overlay can disbond later from the vehicular traffic traversing it. So a lot of times what happens is you start out with something that's quite cool looking like we see here in this picture, but what you end with is it broken away. So like we see that area in the open bay where a big chunk of it just broke loose, it
Yeah.
disbonded. And that's very common. The cracks can traverse back through it like you see here, and the sealers wear down. It's a nightmare to try and clean and keep
Well, one
clean.
and one other thing that I've heard people complain about this solution is it starts to develop kind of like a hollow sound. Is that correct?
It can, when it's starting to despond, like that area where it's missing here, that would have sounded hollow at a certain point because it's setting there, but it's not bonded to the concrete anymore. Now, the good thing about overlays from our perspective is you don't see it in Pennsylvania, Maryland, West Virginia, Virginia. I've seen this mostly down south.
Mm.
I actually went down to Florida for some training to learn how to do overlays, came back and realized we would never do them in our service area because yes, it's going to be terrible in a garage, but this can be problematic anywhere in our environment.
And I think one of the other things is that, like, they, because of the material, they tend to be more of a porous, breathable, or there's certain ones that are more porous and breathable. And that just sounds like in this area it would be a nightmare.
It is, and to do it right, you've got to work with those sealers and rejuvenate them. And
Mm.
rejuvenating the sealers is so problematic. So overlays, much like when I talk about stamped concrete in the garage, they're really bad because they look beautiful at first. They're not going to hold up well, and they're a disaster to get rid of because they're very, very difficult to grind back down. Because you at least got to grind the overlay to flat to fix it. And usually, in grinding it to try and remove it, it starts to shatter, which means then you got to get rid of almost all of it. So, this is one of those things where if you were doing this around your pool, okay, if you're doing it on a sidewalk to rejuvenate it, sure, but don't ever do it on your driveway. Don't do it in your garage because it's not going to hold up that well to long-term vehicular traffic. And in our environments, here in PA, Maryland, it's just too hard of winters on these things.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like, in our service area, and we're not seeing this usually isn't a solution. These overlays, um, but one that we do see is these floor coverings. And I know that we talked about this a little bit in one of our recent podcasts, but let's talk about the funky, stinky, disastrous solution, which is the garage floor coverings.
Yes. Yeah. And when we talk about coverings, I'm going to talk about it from tiles,
Mm,
the mats that you can buy, and even carpet here and there.
yeah,
The tiles specifically, that jumps out to people a lot of times because they want this checkerboard look. And that's what
sure.
I designed this garage to look like. This is the end goal that most people have envisioned. And when it first goes out, it does look really nice. And if you didn't drive on it, it would probably stay like this. The reality is, though, they do tend to get marred up, dirty. They can be difficult to clean. But the stinky part that you mentioned, and which I've always encountered, is it's that water getting down under it and setting there.
Yeah.
And so some of these tiles can breathe out easier than others due to the way that they're actually put together, but most of them, you're still going to trap some water under there. You start to get some odor to it. It starts to look rough. But then what gets worse is you have people put the mats down, and the mats start off with this beautiful solid surface, looks cool, but that's not one big piece of mat. That's actually made up of usually 3 strips, front to back, going back there. So water gets down at the edges, they start to buckle, they curl. And if anything's going to stink, it's the mats and the carpet, because when you pull them up, yeah, when we go to fix those for people, we tell them you got to get this out a week or 2 before we get there. So one, the concrete dries up, and 2,
Yeah.
some of that odor gets to go bye-bye. So, and I don't even have a before to show you because I don't believe there's any point where carpet being put in here. And yes, we've seen this. It's usually the outdoor carpet.
Yep.
They do it as a quick solution. They don't hold up well at all. I mean, carpet's just not meant for you to be driving your vehicle
Right.
over it.
Right.
So,
Moisture really is the key enemy, specifically to those last two, the mats and the carpet.
yeah, the mats also suffer from curling at the edges
Mm,
oftentimes. The other thing about a lot of these coverings is we're looking at a garage here that was poured flat. So it's just sloped from the back of the garage to the front doors so that water comes out. But a lot of garages actually have drains in them. They don't have really perfect pitch. So it's not like everything just rolls down either to the drain or out the door. But when they have drains in them, your floor is sloping down to those drains. Now it becomes very difficult for those tiles to lay properly. And so when you're driving over them, they want to move because they're not laying perfectly flat against the floor. And the same thing with the mats. The mats have to settle, they have to stretch. So you end up with problems there, and you do end up with some of this the curling like we're showing here,
yeah. Yeah.
because it's just too hard. You can't keep those edges down over time.
Yeah, it sure looks good. Probably the day one when you install it, but we've seen it enough where, I mean, I know these are, I will say, you already said it. These are AI generated images. They are very true to form, though. Very true to form.
Well, they are, and I've scolded my staff for not taking more pictures of some of these before, is because we just usually show up and go, have us come back once you've pulled the mats up and we can really see
Yeah.
what we're going to deal with. Because generally, what you find out is the reason they put the floor coverings down in the first place, the mats especially and the carpet, is they were trying to hide very
Yeah.
bad problems, beat
Yeah.
up concrete, dusting really bad, usually very cracked, very pitted. The tiles, the only thing I'll say as a saving grace to tiles is if you were renting a place and you put tiles down just to make it look better and then you take them with you, good for you. That's the one good use of the tiles. But outside of that, these are not solutions I can recommend to people at all.
And just to be clear, the dusting, the cracking, that's all stuff that we that
Oh,
is fairly normal to our process of installing the epoxy polyaspartic
oh, absolutely.
floors.
Almost every floor we do is going to have some cracking, whether it's very minor to major. We can fix all that. Even if you have very soft concrete where it wants to dust, we have primers that you soak in. So it just extends the process one day, but you have materials that are going to go down in, soak in better, and strengthen that surface. And then we apply the normal coatings to it. So all of those things can be dealt with. Same thing
Yeah.
even with pitting and that we can skim coat things in.
Yeah. And now, using that, talking about soaking concrete with stuff, let's talk about disastrous solution number 4, which is the acid stains and the dyes,
Yeah.
where it just, again, it might look great on day one, but it's it's the time going forward that these solutions really start to show their weakness. So talk to us about these solutions, these
Yeah.
acid stains and dyes.
So acid stains are what give you that variegated leathery look. So when you put an acid stain down, it actually reacts with the concrete and creates that swirly pattern. Dyes are more where you're just infusing a color, but it's going to be very consistent looking. They're fairly easy to apply, and they have to be sealed once you're done to maintain it. The problem with your acid stains and your dyes is the sealers, one, aren't going to hold up that well.
Mhm.
The other thing is once they go, these don't penetrate very far down
Yeah.
into the surface. So it might start out looking beautiful like this, and we've done these actually in basements where it doesn't have to be driven over and it's not going to be exposed to the all the chemical attacks. They can look quite good long term where it's just walking traffic. But the problem is what happens in a garage, and this might be a bit of an exaggeration, but it's really not that far from what we've seen, is the sealers wear down. They can't rejuvenate the sealers properly. And then the constant abuse and the cleaning get harder and harder to do. So then you start pressure spraying it and you blow away the remainder of the
Yeah.
coloring that was only in that very top surface. So you end up with something just like this where, yeah, there's some remnants of it, but there's no rejuvenating it. Once you acid stain, that's it. So you have to maintain the sealed surface. It's not designed to be driven over. These look beautiful. This was training again we got in Florida, very popular in the warmer climates. It can be maintained properly, but I would never do it where it's subjected to a lot of attack. So I would never do it in anything but an interior surface that's walked on, or a commercial area where it's just walk on traffic. You're going to
Yeah.
beat up you're going to beat the sealer up. It's going to fail. And then
Well, and in this area, we're dealing with a couple of combinations that are pretty detrimental of sunlight, which Florida is dealing with too. But what Florida is not dealing with are the chemicals from the salts and the things that they're using to treat the roads, and and then just the normal abrasion from the actual tires themselves. Like, is that kind of why that makes it sort of a non just a disastrous solution for kind of the territory that we're in?
Well, I would say for a garage, it doesn't even matter if you're in our territory or if you're in Florida, because even when I got trained to do these and some of my team went down, we looked at it and went, "That's really cool. You cannot put this in a garage and have it hold up unless you were to seal it with our materials."
Mm,
So in the past, when we used to do acid staining, there was a couple where we acid stained it and then we coated it in our clear materials. So it is protected the same way our coatings are. The problem with that, though, is most people, their garage floor was never poured with the intention of you acid staining it. And that's a whole different series we could do. But
yeah.
if you're going to acid stain concrete and have it look great, you have to know you're doing that when you're placing the concrete right from
Yeah.
day one.
Because it's an uncontrolled chemical reaction, right?
Absolutely. You are
Yeah.
at the mercy of that chemical reaction and the concrete that was placed there. So I'll give you a perfect example how it can get screwed up. If they were in there, they poured your garage floor and then they stored materials on it 3 days after it was
Yeah.
poured. and you
Great
lay a four
example.
by eight sheet of plywood there, guess what? When you acid stain it, you're going to find that outline because it laying there during the curing process changed the way it cured, and you will expose that outline.
Yeah.
We did a basement floor where we acid stained it, and you saw everywhere they snapped chalk lines and all sorts of crazy stuff. So it is fraught with danger from day one. I'm not saying you can't do it, but I would never ever do it in a garage.
Well, and the to somebody who would, for some reason, have a uh, they're looking for to redo their acid stained garage floor that they did, 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago. Um, the our floor systems, well, it doesn't matter because we're prepping them, we're grinding them, we're prepping them,
Right.
and it's the same kind of chemical effect that can screw up an acid staining. That's a non-issue with the systems that we put down. Do you want to expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't matter how stained, how ugly your concrete is. When we're grinding over it, we're creating the surface we need. We're getting rid of some of those contaminants. But when we do our chip floors, we're putting a pigmented layer down. So that's fully pigmented. So if we're starting out with gray or tan, your floor becomes completely gray or completely tan. Then we introduce those flakes into it to give you that really cool terrazzo look,
Yeah,
and then we seal it. But there, you are no longer seeing the concrete as its own canvas.
yeah,
And that's the problem with staining and dyes is you're using the concrete as a canvas, and it's probably not going to make a great canvas. we're, we're grinding it and getting it ready and fixing those cracks and doing all the things that you want to create one big seamless, beautiful surface.
yeah,
And it's going to just have the same look throughout the general look throughout the whole floor. You don't have to worry about the fact that there used to be a grass stain over here and there used to be cracks over here.
yeah, exactly.
You know, we're I always joke with people, you can have 100-year-old house, but you're going to have a brand new looking garage floor
Yep,
when we're done.
yep.
Period. So,
So let's jump into the last and final disastrous solution. And this is probably, well, I don't know. I don't have the numbers in front of me. Maybe you do, or at least I've looked at them. I don't know. Is polished concrete the one that we see the most, or is it some combination of the tiles and the carpets? But boy, does this look nice. But tell us the full story of polished concrete and how it ends up being just a terrible solution in the end.
well, polished concrete is very cool looking. I mean, when done properly, that amount of sheen that's there, a lot of times you can walk up and almost see yourself in the floor, when it's taken up because it's honed. And if you think of like
Hmm.
sandpaper, it's honed out to 1500 grit or 3000 grit. At 3000, when we've polished floors to 3000 grit in the past, you could pretty much see yourself fully reflected
Yeah.
in the floor. Very cool looking. We've all seen it at Home Depot when you walk in, and
Right.
theirs isn't polished up to 3000 grit. They only go to like 800, but very shiny, very reflective. We don't see it that often yet. It started popping up a few years ago because of the popularity of polished concrete in commercial applications has increased. So people saw it, they've seen it at Home Depot, and they go, geez, that's really cool. I like it. You put it in, it starts off like this. The problem with polished concrete is the way you maintain it is you run an auto scrub over it every day
Yeah.
with a certain type of pad under it that re-hones it, and it has a certain perfect cleaner that helps to densify it. That's not anything any homeowner's ever going to do. They
Right.
can't do it, and over time, all that sheen disappears. And this is really what you end up with is you've depolished it.
Yeah.
You've actually worn it back down to 300 grit, 200 grit, 40 grit. And so you don't have the sheen anymore. You don't have the feel of it. And polished concrete, if you're going to use it in a garage, you must seal it. You must. Otherwise, it's open to all the chemical attack and it will wear even faster. Well, those sealers, again, they don't hold up well to all the things that you subject a garage to. So we're actually getting ready to redo, or not redo. We're getting ready to coat a garage that the gentleman called me and said, "Hey, when I built my home 4 years ago, they talked me into polishing my garage floor." And he said, "Hey, it looked really cool." but not for very long. And he goes, I couldn't maintain it. And we were joking about it, but yeah, we're getting ready to go coat it. And so from our standpoint, it's just a bit smoother concrete than normal that we'll start off with, but we're still going to grind it open. We're still going to
Yeah.
coat it the normal way. And now it's fully protected. Polished concrete in a garage floor or even a basement floor, anywhere residential, if you can't maintain it, you shouldn't do it, period.
Well, is there an option though for somebody who wants that kind of high shine look, um, but done in a more sensible way?
There is, but you have to start out with the concrete brand new. You have to make sure that no one ever marred the concrete, stained it, snapped any chalk lines on it, because when you grind it down, chalk lines still end up being polished into the floor and you can see them. Because what happens is when
Fascinating.
we've done this commercially, we'll grind to a certain grit, hone it, and then we clear seal it with our epoxies, epoxy primer, and coats of the polyaspartic. And we've actually done it for some Lexus and Toyota dealerships. But they found even for them, it looks really cool, but it looks dirty very quickly,
Yeah.
because it's so high sheen and you're looking at it as a piece of art in a sense. So it did okay for the showroom areas where we've done it. They can be maintained well, but we did it in service areas where I tried to advise them and say, listen, you should do a service bay floor coating like we normally do. But they went with the whole natural look. And I understand that, but it's very hard to maintain. The
Well, and
reality is,
go no, you're saying exactly what I was gonna say. Yeah.
well, the reality is, if you got vehicle traffic on something, and especially if you're doing maintenance or you're doing different things, you have to have good, strong coatings, because coatings, when you seal the floor, yes, it might look beautiful like we're looking at right here, but epoxy and polyaspartic coatings, epoxy for the base, throw the chips in, polyaspartic for the clear coat, they are sealed. And when I say sealed, it's not like saying sealer. This is much, much thicker. It's extremely chemically resistant. It's extremely scratch resistant. So our floors tolerate gasoline being spilled on them, oil being dripped on it, road salt, antifreeze. A lot of those chemicals have no effect on it whatsoever. And even if it does end up getting dirty, okay, it's dirty. Well, the reality is all that is just topical. It isn't down in the pores. You don't have to pressure spray it. It's go out and mop it, hose it down. And for the most part, oftentimes it's just a matter of vacuuming up most of the debris and giving it a quick mop real quick. And yes, I did a little thing for our Pennsylvania viewers with the Penn State sweatshirt guy.
That's
But
good.
but
Eh,
the reality is, Sam, we talk about these disastrous solutions. Garages really only benefit from,
yeah.
it could be a chip coating like we normally do. It could be solid color. I don't recommend it only because it doesn't hide any of the dirt. It could even be the metallic swirled epoxies, but they are extremely hard to keep clean looking and they show scuffing quicker. That's why you do flake floors. They look like terrazzo. They break up the appearance. They're beautiful looking, but they also hold up this way
Yeah.
the longest of all the types of
Yeah.
coatings by far, hands down. So
And it really comes down to those other solutions. It comes down to maintenance. We talked about on our other podcast, specifically talking about the floor coverings and stuff. If you take them out once a year, a big heavy mats that might be, 12, 16 feet, and the inch, 3/4 inch, those things are heavy. But if you take them out and you are dedicated to, taking everything out of your garage, removing the mats, letting them air out. If you're dedicated to the maintenance to one of these other solutions, we're not saying don't do it. We're just saying know what you're getting yourself into. Um, the epoxy polyaspartic systems that we're installing with the chips, it really comes down to they're just the easiest to maintain by far.
they are, and it really doesn't matter. Like I said at the beginning, we're not really making this just for our consumer in our service area.
Yeah.
This is stuff I know from 22 years of dealing with it and being trained in all these systems. I've done the overlays, I've done polished concrete, I've acid stained concrete and dyed it they all have their place, but their place is not in a residential garage.
Yeah.
They just
Yep.
are not fitting. It's like saying I'm going to put indoor carpet out on my sidewalk and saying, "Well,
Yes.
you can do it." Well, just
Yeah.
because you can doesn't mean you should do it, you
Right.
know?
Right.
And after 22 years, I cannot find anything that's gonna work better in a garage floor than professional grade, high performance coatings.
Yeah.
And we've done other podcasts on epoxy versus polyaspartic. It's not versus. The epoxy has their place as the bonding
Exactly.
layer, and the polyaspartic polyureas have their place for the clear coats. Yes, you can do 1-day floors. Yes, you can probably get away with it in certain areas, not necessarily our service area, but
Right.
yeah, it's coatings give you longevity. We have customers 22 years later that have no problems with their floors whatsoever.
Yep. Yep. Well, that's great. I hope people hear what you're saying. Again, we're just trying to educate, and we're trying to just share the experience that you and your team have had over, the 21, 22 plus years that you've been doing this. And we like to say that, or at least think that we know what we're doing, with our over 1,000 5-star reviews, over 9,000 installs. eh, we've seen a thing or two, and um we one of the ways that we use all that experience is to put it readily available on our website, in our blog, in the resource center. So go and visit our blog at strongholdfloors.com. Look at the resource center. Look at all that we can give you to educate you as you make your decision on your garage floor. And if you are ready and you have questions, just fill out the free quote form, and we'll give you we call it a transparent pricing guarantee. It's a straightforward, a quick estimate based off of the size of your floor, no frills, no complication, and you can empower yourself to make the right decision and get yourself a beautiful brand new polyaspartic floor coating from Stronghold Floors. Mike, is there anything else you want to add as we wrap up?
I hope people don't go the route of learning the hard way with these 5 solutions, or 5 disaster solutions. I really hope that they watch this in time, or they found some other resource and don't have to deal with
Yeah,
the headache of getting rid of those solutions, because some of them are quite painful to unravel and undo.
yeah. But if you are one of those people who have enjoyed learning the hard way, we will more than happily help you get your next beautiful floor that's not going to cause you a headache down the road, right, Mike?
Absolutely. That's what we're here for. No pressure,
All right.
but no pain either.
Yeah, exactly. So again, visit the website, look at all the resources that we have there, and when you're ready, fill out the quote form, and we'll get you on your way to your new garage floor. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.
All right. Thanks, Sam.